I find it curious that someone would make a public apology but not do it privately.
Mhm.
I am speaking for myself, but
In 2014, singer-songwriter Ryan Adams released his self-titled album to a number 4 debut on the Billboard 200. That same year, his wife Mandy Moore told CBS it was finally the year of actual progress on her own record. But it never came out. Not that year, not the next, not even in the next 6 years after, because the person who offered to produce her comeback was the same person making sure it never happened. By the end of this video, you'll understand how one man halted her music career while building his own with the years he stole from hers.
I saw my first play when I was 6, and I think it hit me then that I wanted to be a performer. And I always wanted to be like, the lead in the play when we got to be in 6th grade and do the play. And
Mandy Moore was only 15 when Epic Records signed her, and her first single, Candy, went gold in 1999, while her debut album hit platinum. Over the next few years, she would release I Wanna Be With You, Mandy Moore, and Coverage, while crossing into film with A Walk to Remember. By her early 20s, she had sold millions of records. Then the teen pop wave started fading, and each of her releases sold less than the one before it. She was personally outgrowing the genre, so Epic had no more reason to keep her. By 2004, they'd let her go. She signed with Sire Records after that, but they still wanted pop, and she didn't. So nothing came out of the deal. 2 years with no album, no direction, and nobody in her corner. Most artists wouldn't survive that, but Moore did. When she signed with EMI, they gave her something no label had before: full creative control. She wrote her own songs and put out an album called Wild Hope, and it earned her the best reviews of her career. For the first time, she wasn't just a pop act. She was a singer-songwriter who had earned a second act on her own terms. Then, in March 2009, she married fellow musician Ryan Adams, while her album Amanda Lee came out that same spring. A new husband, a new album, a new start. But it would be the last she'd release for the next 11 years.
Music was a point of control for him, Moore said. The 34-year-old who first shot to fame as a singer told The Times Adams took charge of her music career, but lashed out in ways that Moore came to consider psychologically abusive.
In 2010, Adams offered to produce Moore's next album. On the surface, it felt like the best possible scenario. Her husband, a critically acclaimed singer-songwriter with real industry connections, stepping in to bring her back to music. But when she parted ways with her music manager shortly after, Adams discouraged her from seeking anyone else. So no other producers, no other managers. And that left him as the only person standing between her and a record. From the outside, it looked like a husband stepping up, but in practice, he'd made himself the sole gatekeeper. They wrote songs together regularly, and Adams promised to record them, yet he never did. He'd booked studio time for her, then handed those sessions to other female artists he was working with instead. However, it didn't stop there. Moore told the New York Times in 2019 that he would say things like, "You're not a real musician because you don't play an instrument." She even called music a point of control for him. Meanwhile, his own career was thriving. His album Ashes and Fire debuted at number 7 on the Billboard 200 in 2011, followed by his self-titled record that charted even higher in 2014. He even had Moore sing on 2 tracks in it. Then he went on to produce artists like Fall Out Boy and Jenny Lewis, and was touring constantly. So he had the studio time, the relationships, the momentum while she had none, and he made sure it stayed that way. The worst part? Moore genuinely believed the album was gonna happen. In 2012, she publicly announced she was already working on a record with Adams, calling it an intense, emotional record. Then, in 2014, she told CBS it was the year of actual progress. But then in 2015, she told interviewers again that 2016 would be the re-emergence of my music. She kept saying these things because Adams kept telling her they were true. Yet every time, nothing materialized. Over the course of their marriage, he'd released 3 charting albums, while Moore released 0. But even while her music stopped, her acting career flourished.
If you ever change your mind,
During those 11 years without an album, Mandy Moore didn't disappear. Instead, she voiced Rapunzel in Tangled, which earned over $500 million worldwide. Then she landed the career-defining role of Rebecca Pearson on This Is Us, earned Golden Globe and Emmy nominations, and got a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. She became more visible during the silence than she'd ever been as a recording artist. So the only thing that really stopped was her music. Because music was the one area of her career where Adams had leverage. It was their shared profession, the space where he could position himself as the authority and control her career. Everything outside of it was beyond his reach. But even the work she managed came at a cost. Moore told NME in an interview that whenever she took on acting jobs, things would completely fall apart at home. There was a constant pull to attend to Adams, a demand that made it nearly impossible to function even outside of music. And sitting at the center of her biggest role was an irony that's almost too perfect. Because on This Is Us, she played Rebecca Pearson, an aspiring singer who gives up her dreams after being told she wasn't good enough. Off-screen, the damage was just as real, and their marriage wouldn't survive it. They legally separated around August 2014, though the announcement didn't come until January 2015. By 2016, their divorce was finalized. Yet even free from Adams, Moore couldn't go back to music. She later told Billboard she had slight PTSD from being on labels in the past, and said the damage had settled so deep that she needed years just to consider recording again. It wasn't until July 2018 that she posted on Instagram, "It's time, I miss it. I'm not scared anymore. No more excuses. No more allowing someone else's insecurities to dictate my relationship to music and singing." In the years after, Moore opened up about what the marriage had really cost her. She told Mark Maron on his podcast in 2019 that it felt like drowning. She said, "I was living my life for him. I had no sense of self. I was imperceptible. I was so small in my own world." Then in 2023, on the Dinners on Me podcast, she described the marriage as leaving her in a really hollow, empty, isolated place, and said the person she was during those years is someone she doesn't recognize at all. But Moore wasn't the only woman Adams tried to control, and in 2019, 6 more went public.
Singer-songwriter Ryan Adams is responding to a New York Times report suggesting he would offer to help women's careers and then would become verbally or emotionally abusive.
On February 13, 2019, the New York Times published an exposé that reframed everything. In it, Moore and 6 other women described a pattern that went far beyond one marriage. Adams dangled career opportunities while pursuing female artists. When they didn't comply, he turned controlling and vengeful, pulling his support and subjecting them to emotional and verbal abuse. And these accounts were corroborated by family members, friends, and correspondents the newspaper reviewed. Take Phoebe Bridgers. She was 20 when she met Adams, and he recorded her music, released her single on his label, and invited her to open for him on tour. It looked like mentorship. But then, the relationship turned into what Bridgers described as obsessive and emotionally abusive. He demanded she prove her whereabouts, insisted she leave events for phone sex, and threatened to unalive himself. When she pushed back, the career support vanished. The same sequence Moore had lived through: offer help, gain trust, use both as leverage. Then there's his ex-fiancée, Megan Butterworth, who described a similar dynamic: controlling behavior, emotional abuse, dictating who she was allowed to work with and who she could see. So every woman, the same story. And that's exactly what stopped Moore from making music. Adams didn't just happen to be a bad husband who was also a musician. He had the connections, the studio time, the industry credibility, and every woman who came to him for career help ended up under his control instead. Moore told The Times, "What you experience with him feels so exclusive. You feel like there's no way other people have been treated like this." But Adams saw it differently. Through his lawyer, he called the allegations grousing by disgruntled individuals and said Moore's account was completely inconsistent with his view of the relationship. Although he acknowledged on Twitter that he'd made mistakes, yet called the article upsettingly inaccurate. Still, no court has adjudicated the abuse claims. Even a separate FBI investigation into allegations that he had texted a minor, a different accuser entirely, was closed without charges. However, the fallout was immediate. Blue Note and Universal shelved his upcoming albums. His tour dates were canceled and sponsorships pulled. So in July 2020, Adams published a public apology in the Daily Mail. There are no words to express how bad I feel about the ways I've mistreated people. When Moore was asked about it on the Today Show, her answer was simple.
I find it curious that someone would make a public apology but not do it privately. I am speaking for myself, but I have not heard from him.
7 women, the same playbook each time. Career help as the way in, then control as the lock that kept them there. And what happened to Mandy Moore's music wasn't a marriage that fell apart. It was a pattern.
Yeah, I'm happy to be stepping, very confidently back into that world. And
we're all happy you are.
Yeah, thanks. I got to make the record with my husband and one of my very closest friends, and wrote all the songs and had an incredible band.
And then she came back. In March 2020, Mandy Moore released Silver Landings, her first album in 11 years. She recorded it with her now husband Taylor Goldsmith of the band Dawes. No more gatekeeper, no one else deciding when or whether she gets to sing. Then she said, "I very much feel like I'm at the helm of the ship now," and she meant it. In 2021, she became a mother. Then in 2022, she released another album called In Real Life and went on her first tour in over a decade. Mandy Moore didn't stop making music because she lost her voice or her nerve or her ambition. She stopped because someone turned help into a weapon. But the thing about her is that she comes back. Epic dropped her, yet she bounced back. Then the person closest to her tried to erase her from the one thing she loved most, and still, she came out the other side.